Good morning, everybody. We have you in here now, door shutting. My name is Nick Momyer, and I'm here today in a dual role. So first off, my first role is as a proud employee and local leader for firm Whittier Trust Company, who's sponsoring today's event. At Whittier Trust, we're extremely proud of the support that we can provide the Seattle Public Library Foundation and the Seattle Public Library. In my second role, I'm actually a board member of the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And I'm proud to introduce our board president, Justo González. Justo and I have gone back over a decade or so, and over those years, I've taken a great deal of comfort in his wisdom, his counsel, and his leadership on both this board and a board we shared previously. So without further ado, I want to bring up Justo to kick off today's event. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you to the other board members who are joining us today. And most importantly of all, thank you, all of you, for coming. Welcome to your beautiful central branch of our amazing library. In just a moment, we're going to hear from our new chief librarian, Tomphay, and he's going to talk about the state of our library. We'll also hear from Team Read, one of the library's closest community partners, about how their program advances literacy and equity in our community. Then Jonna Ward, the CEO of the Seattle Public Library Foundation, will provide an update on what your support means for our library, our city, our society, and democracy in our great republic. Donors to the foundation made it possible for the foundation to provide over $5 million in funding to the Seattle Public Library in 2021. That means over 100,000 books for the collection, expansion of the digital collection and programs, funding for 40 programs, including those you learned about upstairs, like Team Read. This is all above and beyond what public funding provides for our library. And it ensures that our library remains central to our community. We hope you leave today feeling inspired by the impact of your support, hopeful about the future of our library, and energized to continue working together. Now, there are two quick housekeeping notes. Out the door to my left, through the Children's Center, are the restrooms. And second, if you haven't already done so, please remember to pick up a copy of this year's Seattle Reads book, The House of Broken Angels. They're on my right. It's by Luis Alberto Urrea. It's a great book, and I hope you all enjoy it. There's copies in English and in Spanish. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Tomphay. Tom was an interim chief librarian since April of 2021. He was then unanimously selected to be the executive director and chief librarian by the SPL Board of Trustees this past March. Prior to that, he served as the director of library programs for 6 years. And before that, he joined us from Nevada after a very long career in libraries there. Tom has been a great partner to the foundation, and we're excited to support his vision for the library. Now, please join me in welcoming our new chief librarian, Tomphay.
All right. Well, thank you all. And thanks, Justo and Nick, for the very nice introduction. I wanted to thank all of you as donors to the foundation, your involvement, advocacy, even with the foundation. It's an important piece. And I was thinking through last night as I was going through some of the material that I have at home, and I was reminded of how important giving is by the book that I saw on my shelf, The Giving Tree. I think everybody's probably seen it or read it. A great children's book by Shel Silverstein. And it has all of those things about how we sometimes take that gift and that giving for granted through our lives. And that was the one thing I wanted to make sure that we don't do here at SPL. Your donations, your volunteerism, Your advocacy is a gift every day. And as we make changes in the library, we want you to be part of that journey with us so that at the end, we're not feeling like you've given and you haven't been appreciated. We greatly appreciate all that you do for us. And I wanted you to know that today and every day that you're working with the library. I'm really pleased to be here with all of you at the Central Library. I have a couple of questions for you. How many of you come to the Central Library regularly? A few, maybe a quarter. How many are back for the first time since the pandemic? Oh, all right, quite a few. How many of you are here for the first time? Oh, only a few. All right. Well, hopefully you'll have a chance today, if you're new, to take a tour. We're open this today and this afternoon. So please wander through, talk to staff. We have a great team here. One of the things I'd like to do before we move on is acknowledge the land we're on. The Seattle Public Library is on Indigenous land. These are the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people, past and present. I'm often asked, why does the library do this? And what do you want us to do as audience members? And I appreciate the question. Really, it's about reflection, acknowledging the land and bringing awareness to Native and Indigenous people and our history as Americans. It's something we do to demonstrate our organization's commitment to equity and learning about other cultures. Of course, we're in this house of information and knowledge, and we encourage you to use the library to study, understand, and act in a way that inspires you. We acknowledge the land and those who were stewards before us with gratitude. Thank you for taking a few moments to reflect with me. And as I said, it's really good to see everyone in person. It's been a long time, and I've been going out to our branches and the Central Library practically from the time we closed, because we knew we would have to get our buildings back open again and get services out to everyone. It was really strange to see our buildings empty. Actually, it was heartbreaking. It was very, very strange. Even when we provided curbside, something was missing, and that was kids. We didn't see kids, and we didn't see kids all the way until almost late last year and early this year. It's really good to see families back and coming in and participating, and teens who really we lost track of for about 2 years. In my interim, as mentioned, in my first 6 months in my appointed position, I've set some pretty high goals around library operations and returning to regular operations. And I can say that we are substantially there. We've restored our hours, our meeting rooms and study rooms are opened, and programming is now both in person and virtual. However, I really want to make a critical point. We're entering a new era that requires listening, reflection, and analysis. There's not going to be going back to what it was. It's going to be what it is and what we create. And that's an important piece. And there are those in our communities that were disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And so we need to listen. We need to develop programs and services with an equity lens that actually serves their needs as they have gone through this pandemic and are coming out of it. That means that we need to focus on our BIPOC communities, our marginalized communities within this city, to make sure that services are available to everyone in this city. The library is a hub in our community, and Central is a hub to our branch system. The library is a place of convening like this. We're a place where discussions can occur, sometimes tough discussions, and perspectives be explored. We know that the library provides essential services to Seattle residents, and it's not just the traditional books and materials and the reading that we all think of. It's also other programs and services that meet people where they are and hopefully meet them through their entire life. This city most certainly loves its libraries. We have very high satisfaction ratings in patron surveys, and I know that's due to our staff who you all interact with, who do amazing things every day. We have high rates of readership, consistently strong voter support, and of course, strong donor support. We couldn't do it without you. As I mentioned earlier, the nature of our work is changing. We used to hold all programs in person. How many people had to attend programs here and often said, wow, I wish I could, just view that from the comfort of my home. Well, the good thing today is you can. Sometimes it's difficult to get downtown. Sometimes it might be difficult to get to a branch. As the city gets ready to rip up more streets for all of these transportation projects, it will be more difficult to get everywhere. So we're happy to be able to do these hybrid environments and hopefully share more of our programming with more people. Access is really key. And so hopefully, if you have experienced only in-person programming, do try some of the hybrid programming. I think you'll find it still very engaging and very valuable. So as we continue to explore more of this hybrid approach to things, we know we'll have to have more platforms, electronic platforms. That'll allow us more access. But we also know that we need to expand more of those in-person services because people like to connect. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't want to connect, either with the library, with each other, or even with me. It's a really important part of what we do as a society. Some of the great examples of our hybrid work came about during the pandemic. As you know, we had a great homework help program that was all volunteer based out in the branches and a great number of branches. And we had to shut that down during the pandemic. Through generous support of the foundation and donors like you, we were able to bring on tutor.com, which is an all online product with real people on the other end, 7 days a week, working with kids during the worst of the pandemic where school was all over the place. We saw over 4,000 sessions with students in that 2020 period to today. And that helped. And it's still available today because we're going to keep that to go along with the 6 branches that we just opened homework help up in homework help up in today. Try saying that a few times faster. But with that, we know that it's going to take both of these. Some students excel in an online environment. Some students don't. They need that social and emotional connection and that mentorship from our great volunteers who work with them sometimes on a weekly and sometimes a daily basis. It's been hugely valuable for our students. And I'm very happy to say that those 6 programs are up and operating as of the end of this month. And we hope to restore that program to full as we move through next year. And as we do all of this work and as these changes occur, we must continue to listen and adapt to what's happening in our communities. We need to really think about new strategies for delivering services. We know the pandemic brought many changes, an overnight spike in e-materials. How many of you use e-materials, audiobooks, e-audio, e-books? All right. How many of you would never have touched one before the pandemic? Quite a few, right? So that is the case. And with that, though, comes higher prices. We know that. E-material costs us more, 3 to 7 times more than printed materials. And so we need to accommodate both. 50% of our circulation is e-material and 50% physical now. We need to continue. We also know that there's some really alarming stats from this last 2.5 years. Here's one I want you to take away today and why it's so important that we do this work in our educational support. In the last 2 years, nearly 30 years of educational advancement in reading and math have been lost. 30 years in the last 2 years in reading and math advancement has been lost. This is where the library can step up, and this is where the library can assist. And that's why the things like homework help and all of these other programs that we do in youth support are so critical. These kids are going to have some challenges, and it's going to be both downstream or in the future, and it's also going to be those that are coming up that also will have experienced. This will be something that will be lasting for several decades as we course correct. We also know that library spaces are used heavily every day for those who come in and do all the things you can think of in libraries, but also sometimes as emergency shelter in heat events, as we've experienced here a few times in the last couple of years, and also in snow or inclement weather. We're working now on making sure that we get air conditioning in every building. We're working on that climate resiliency. It's been a focus for the last couple of years, and we're continuing to push forward, and we're looking for new means of revenue to help support that. And we know that as we look at our spaces, we need to also think of those teens that I just talked about as well. They lost a lot of that social, emotional development timeframe. Being out in community, working with the library, being in our programs, we need to make sure our spaces reflect good, healthy spaces for them to grow and learn in. And it's been some unprecedented challenges for library workers. I think for those of you who have relationships with our library staff, you can ask any of them, has this been an easy time in their career? It has not, I can assure you. We've seen an increasingly politicized climate around library collections, all the book banning, and that goes across ideologies. So it is an equal opportunity book banning option, I guess, for folks, sadly, but that is something that our staff faces. And it's an important piece that we all acknowledge and that we also work to really look at how we amplify voices and create more perspectives. We don't want less, and most certainly in this city, we do not. The city has always been great about collections, and we need to continue to grow our collections and the voices who represent that collection. We know we've seen increased safety concerns in our library. That's something that we are continuing to work with the city, meeting them, discussing how we can work together, incorporating our social workers, our skilled security, and our library staff to make sure that we're assisting patrons to be successful. That is the one thing that we say every day, no matter how challenging it is with everyone coming into our space. Our goal is to make sure everyone is successful in their library. And I'm proud of our staff's work. They never stopped thinking. They were creative during the pandemic, from everything from curbside to book bags that you could grab full of books. They were amazing, and they're truly the heart of this library. And as we build the library of the future, we've got to face all of those challenges head on, acknowledge our successes and failures, again, understand those changing community needs, and we also have to develop new funding sources to better manage the increasing costs of digital materials, aging physical spaces, and new needs in the community. And the physical spaces are important. This building will be 20 years old in a year. The Library for All campaign that many of you put so much towards is now 25 years old. We have to reinvest in our buildings. We have to reinvest in those spaces for those next generations to make them relevant. And that's going to be a big ask. It's going to be a big ask of the community over the next 5 to 7 years as we begin that work and create that vision of what it's going to look like. All of it can sound daunting, but it's really exciting to me. We now, everyone here and in our community, has an opportunity to reestablish and reimagine the library's role. We will do this through our Foresight Planning, which has just begun, in which we'll ask the community to help us think about what our library should be like 10 years from now. We'll determine plausible futures that we want to drive towards, and then we'll create the strategic plan that will have goals, objectives, and measurable outcomes to make sure that we stay on track and on focus. And through all of this, the library will remain the most democratic institution in our city and in our country, a welcoming space for all. We will provide more people with access to information and tools to participate in society and democracy, and we will expand new audiences. We will focus on those who have been historically excluded, and we will surface and amplify new voices. Our efforts will be rooted in equity always. We will become more inclusive, address disparities, and prepare to serve future generations not yet born. We are committed to being an active and positive institution of change in our community for generations to come. And as I mentioned earlier, seeing children and youth back in our spaces truly makes me happy. And the program that we're going to share with you today reminds me a lot of a program my daughter went through. She went to a Montessori school, K through 8, when we were in Nevada. And when she was a kindergarten and a first grader, 7th and 8th graders would come and read to them individually. And the kids would get so excited about that in kindergarten and first grade. And as she became older and older, and obviously wasn't seeing them, she kept telling me, I am going to be one of those readers when I'm a 7th grader. And she was. And she was a reader for 7th and 8th grade to all those kids in kindergarten and first grade. She loved it, and it made an impact from the day one for her as a kindergartner and a first grader. And it's now my pleasure to introduce you to an important library partner program that brings children and teens together, and it's Team Read. Team Read is one of the best examples of community engagement leading to positive impact. We've had years of deep partnership with this group. The program is deeply rooted in our community, and it remained accessible throughout the entire pandemic, which is an amazing thing. Their work is more important than ever in addressing that reading loss that I mentioned and fostering that teen communication connection, that social emotional piece that is so critical right now. To hear more about this incredible program, let me introduce former Team Read board member and senior program manager with Microsoft Philanthropies, Jolenta Coleman Bush. We thank Microsoft for their longtime support for literacy and the library, and thank you, Jolenta, for being with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Tom, Seattle Public Library, and the Foundation. I'm so honored to be here today to discuss a topic and an organization that is near and dear to my heart: literacy and Team Read. Team Read is a literacy program designed for dual impact, ensuring that all kids become strong readers and teens can have access to a meaningful, paid job. Team Read works after school and in the summer to pair elementary students with carefully trained teen tutors to strengthen their reading skills. The little kids in Team Read benefit from one-to-one targeted reading support from a devoted team, and the teens both develop their own skills and experience what it means to help someone else succeed. It's kind of that lift while you climb. I have served on the board for Team Read for the past several years because I believe in the power of reading. As a mother of 2 and educator, I know how critical it is for kids to gain early reading skills and confidence, establish meaningful relationships, and broaden their worldview through stories. Since 2012, Seattle Public Library and the Foundation have been outstanding partners to Team Read by loaning space and support for that year-round programming, allowing Team Read to expand to reading support in some of our most under-resourced communities. It's great to celebrate 10 years of partnership together with you all today. It's also important to note that with the help of Seattle Public Library and the Foundation, and many of you in this room, Team Read was able to continue tutoring almost without interruption during the pandemic, including nearly 500 readers and over 300 teens in the last year, engaging in that joyful and impactful work of reading together. At this time, I want to bring to the stage 2 of our Team Read coaches to share more about their experience with Team Read. Thank you. Welcome. Let's start out by introducing yourselves to the audience. We'll start with Kyle.
Hi, my name is Kyle Gustafson. I am a senior at the downtown school, and this year will be my third year in Team Read, this year as a site assistant.
Hi. Hi, my name is Helin Tashkesen. I go to Cleveland STEM High School as a junior, but I'm also working for my Associates of Science degree at Seattle Central College. This is my 4th year at Team Read and 2nd year as a site assistant.
Great. Let's kind of dive right in. So, hey, Lynn, we've heard how the library and literacy help build community. Can you tell us about your own experience with reading and connecting with this community?
Yeah, so I immigrated to the US when I was 5 years old. And my favorite memory to tell everyone is the day after we came here, the first place that we went was the Beacon Hill Library. So that was the first place that I had, had a chance to interact with people. And it was very scary because I didn't know how to speak and interact with these other individuals because I didn't have a language in common with them. So slowly over the years, we would keep coming, and I would come at least once a week, and I would take that chance to attend talk times with my dad, where we would go and talk with other ESL people and have a chance to slowly build that community. And it gave me a chance to gain that confidence. So over those years, I would keep going, and slowly I started interacting with the staff there, and I slowly started making friends with the people who worked at the library. So this gave me a really strong start to high school and to interacting with my teachers in elementary and middle school. So I think this is a big thing for me, and I know I'm not just the only person who has had that community built in the library.
Thank you for sharing. I think you really pointed out how libraries can be a third place for so many members of our community, right? Where it's outside of their regular work or their school, right? It's a place to bring people together to really share, learn, and grow. So thank you for sharing. Kyle, over to you. What have you learned during your experience, your Team Read experience, about helping young readers develop skills?
Yeah, so one thing I've noticed to be the same with pretty much all my students is that they learn so much more effectively when they really enjoy what they're reading. So I think some parts of the Team Read curriculum include reading a book twice, going over words that a student may not know, asking different questions to improve comprehension. And those are all great, but they will never work as well if a student is not enjoying what they're reading. So I think a lot of people, including myself at first, had a main focus on just improving fluency, comprehension, all those things with my readers. But I realized that my most special moments in Team Read are when I can help a student find a book that they truly enjoy reading, and when I can help them experience the wonder of really enjoying a book they're reading. And what I've realized then is that our main goal shouldn't be on, giving them new words in their vocabulary, or improving fluency in reading, or making sure they're comprehending it right. It should just be on helping them find books they like. And if I can just help a student find one book that they really like, then all of those things, fluency, comprehension, they'll follow so much more naturally.
Thank you. I think it's really clear that Team Read strategy is really helpful and important, especially given some of the academic loss that Tom talked about earlier. And great strategy in terms of thinking about, there's kids that don't like to read, or they think they don't like to read because they haven't found the right books. And then there's kids that actually need help learning how to read. And you're seeming like you're addressing both. So thank you. Hey, Lynn, what do you think adults need to know about young readers?
So I'll explain this through my own story. When I first came here, when I first started school, all the kids during reading time would go get their books from the bins that were beautifully labeled and would pick up their books and go sit down to read. And then someone would have to bring over a book that was just printed out, half sheets of paper, and staple those together and give it to me to read, because I wasn't at that level yet. I couldn't understand some of those books and what they were talking about. So during that time, I would get many of those books. I wouldn't let the fact that I had, a black and white piece of paper slow me down. I would go home and grab as many of those books as I could and go with my mom and read those books. So we would spend time doing math practice and then spent the rest of our time reading those books and then talking about what we learned from them. So something that adults need to realize, especially for ESL students, is that these students might not fully comprehend the whole book at first. For me and a lot of students, you have to first pronounce those words. You have to understand how to actually say them. Then you have to understand what that word means, translate it back to your native language, and then continue on to the next word. So at that point, you're basically reading a word and then another word. You're not reading a whole book. So people should not, at the beginning, just expect, okay, what was this book about? You have to help them gain that confidence to understand what they're reading and then be able to implement that into the books that they've learned from.
Thanks. I think you highlighted a really important issue, which is making sure whenever we're building programs that support youth and families, to make sure that they're first student and family centered, asking them and beginning with, what do you want? How do you best learn? Oh, great. Thank you. Kyle, can you tell us about the impact Team Read has had on students and coaches during COVID and school closures?
Yeah, so I first joined Team Read in the middle of COVID, right? So there was no in-person school, there was no seeing friends, there was none of that. And while we did have online school at that point, so there was a space we could go to talk with teachers and classmates, because of the structured environment of school, it made it really hard to actually connect with anyone in a meaningful way. So I think one thing that I found Team Read provided that was super important was just a space that elementary school students and high school students could go after school and just like form a connection with someone. You know, and Team Read doesn't have grades, you know, it doesn't have assignments that need to be completed. So what it really provided for students, elementary school students, was a space that they could go to and just talk about their life with someone who is a little closer to their age and who they may look up to a little more, and just talk about their life, read some books. And that was super important. And I think it had the same effect on coaches as well, because, you know, we also had a lack of connection, and just being able to like read with a kid, it was super important and definitely helped to improve morale and our moods. So I think it was super important to students and coaches throughout COVID in that regard.
Bringing together, you know, relationships and technology really supported a lot of students, including the coaches during this time when a lot of folks felt really isolated. As we sit here in this iconic building, Central Branch, it makes me wonder, and this question is for both of you, what does a library mean to your generation and for your community? Caitlin, let's start with you.
So for me, this library, all of these libraries, these branches have a really special meaning of being a place where you can come to learn. As I think this was talked about before, BIPOC communities, and especially those who were minorities at, you know, years before, libraries were very specific. They were very exclusive to specific groups. So not everyone had the opportunity to explore their curiosity or think of a question and come to the library and look into it. So Team Read and this library is an opportunity for students to learn how to read and have those abilities, those skill sets of learning how to learn new vocabulary and learning how to use comprehension skills and enjoy the books that they read. Then helps them use their curiosity to continue that and come to the library and be like, I'm interested in this topic. Our teachers aren't teaching it. I should go look for a book in that field. Or, this artist or this author is really cool. Let me look into that. So it gives people the opportunity, especially as a place that years ago was not very inviting to all people, to actually see and have that open door and be welcoming for everyone.
Absolutely. So that democratization of access to information, that's really key. And it is truly a social justice issue, ensuring that folks have access to digital literacy, just basic information to really support their day-to-day life. Thank you. Kyle, What do you think the library means to your generation and to your community?
I think that one thing the library has always provided to our generation is a sort of foundation of resources in a way. So I think one aspect of that is finding accurate information. Our generation is unique in that we have access to pretty much more information than anyone has had ever in history. But the downside of that is that we have access to more information than anyone has had in history. So it can be really hard, and it's actually a huge time sink for people my age to find information online that is accurate, unbiased, and relevant to what we're doing. So what the library provides is a sort of bedrock that we can rely on to go, whether it's a chemistry paper or an English essay, we can go to the library online or in person, and I know I can go there and find the information I need to start up on a project or to, like you said, expand my curiosity in a certain subject. And I know I can rely on that. And that is super important to people my generation. And I think the other aspect of that is books. I mean, obviously it's a library. And so they've always had a huge catalog of books in person. And for our generation, having more online resources, they also provide that same access online. So I remember when I first got an e-reader and I found the Seattle Public Library's catalogs of books online. And I started expanding my interest in so many areas, and it really helped me to expand my interest in reading too. So just being able for the library to be able to seamlessly transition to a completely new medium and still provide the same access to everyone, different people of color as well. And just to be able to provide that support with information, expanding our curiosities and interests and books, that's been super important to people in my generation.
Great. I think based on your answers, we know that programs like Team Read and the library are just as relevant today as they were before, and much needed. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated you all taking the time to really share your experience with us. I spent a little time with both of them this week, and I can tell you that, your generation is in good hands with leaders such as yourselves. So we really thank you for your commitment to literacy and to your community. So please join me in thanking Lynn and Kyle. Thank you. And now I want to bring CEO Jonna Ward to the stage.
Board at one point in time. But thank you to our special guests, and you'll have a chance if you'd like at the end of the program. Melissa Palethorpe, there we go, the executive director of Team Read, and both Kyle and Helene will be available for more conversation if you'd like. A program like Team Read is the kind of thing when you bring library together with a really special program and you start to make magic. And the fact that the library through the foundation has been able to be the kind of partner that helps pay the teens and bring so much more tutoring to the children of Seattle who need it most is just a really powerful partnership. And so I'm proud of how our library partners with others, because it really does leverage what the library is doing and helps other organizations. And that's a powerful combination. Team Read is one example of about 40 different programs that the foundation funds and can invest in thanks to you. And that roughly $5 million is roughly 5% of the library's funding, but it's such a crucial piece of it. So the money that we give the library each year is really focused into 3 big buckets. Education, of which Team Read programming is a big part of it. We also support economic development, which was in place before the pandemic, but really became even a greater importance through the pandemic. And then enrichment, and think about books and materials. 1 out of every 4 is paid for privately. So more copies, deeper into a subject matter. Those are all privately funded. But every bit of that is under this umbrella around equity. And you heard equity spoken of earlier. This library is committed to providing resources for those in the community who need it most. And that's what foundation dollars have always been able to do to take our library's work above and beyond what it could ever do on its own. And so we invest in the library, but we also help cultivate the relationships that the library has through partnership and through funding and resources and being a matchmaker, so to speak. And our third big area is around advocacy. We are, as a foundation, very much the external face and voice of the library out in the public. And we take every opportunity we can to talk about the amazing work the library is doing. So all of this can be done, but it's only because of all of you who believe and invest in the library through the foundation. And you're helping ensure our library's long-term vitality. And we share a vision with the library for a vibrant community where imagination and opportunity thrive. And that's so true what our partnership's about. So as earlier Tom said, libraries are the hub of every healthy, inclusive, and socially just community. And our work as a supporting organization to the library has always been about helping our library be the very best it possibly can. And keeping a library relevant means it has to evolve and change, and that's expensive and hard work, and the foundation has made that possible. But the other aspect is really about how do we ensure that our library remains resilient? Because there's a lot of things happening that can come the way of the library that it finds itself dealing with. It's almost like the early warning system to things that are changing in our community. The library tends to see those problems and things fester up first. But because of this private partner publiship, public-private partnership, that little bit of marginal investment in this library helps move that big, huge public investment that we make as taxpayers. And there is just so much leverage. And many of you heard me say, I think this is one of the best investments donors can make because your money goes so far and is able to do so much because of the tie with the public. And when libraries are adequately funded, they are the bedrock of the community. I agree with you, Kyle. They support literacy and access to information. And this in turn provides a stable foundation for a healthy democracy. Now, the bedrock of democracy. Many of you may agree, we are pretty sheltered here in Seattle in this thing you call the blue bubble. But it doesn't mean we're immune to the things that are happening around us. It's a unique time for books, access, equity work. Elevating new voices suddenly became politicized and risky. And it's almost like anything public is being questioned right now. So as we watch and see the erosion of some of these important institutions that I will admit probably have taken for granted, seeing the challenges with our free press, seeing the challenges around freedom to choose, freedom to vote, without access to information and making sure everybody in our society can participate, our democracy risks faltering. So that's where the libraries come in, that's where they shine. Libraries act as this connective tissue that helps hold our democracy together because libraries have a deep commitment to intellectual freedom so that you can read and learn whatever you want. It's also one of those few trusted sources where citizens can go to make informed decisions, provides access and eliminates barriers, especially for children and historically excluded populations. But in some ways, the thing most of all is it's that welcoming space where it doesn't matter who you are, what you bring with you, how you are moving through the world, you are welcome here because we have resources for you. And that ultimately is what leads to a healthy democracy because of a healthy society. And it's back to you donors. This is where you really come in. Because of you, our library was this incredible beacon during a really dark time through the pandemic. And also because of you, we have these incredible libraries across this entire city. Everyone has something in their community to help them. And so at the end of the day, our library is incredibly strong and we're all very proud of that. But we are a role model of where the private and public come together to allow us to do the kinds of things that the library really wants to do. Because ultimately, our role is helping them really take their aspirations and actually turn them into action and make things happen. So it's been 20 years plus now that I've been involved in libraries, and it's different today than it's ever been. And I think libraries truly are more important today than they have been in all the time. They've been important, but today is different and things are changing. And as donors, you are truly the lifeblood. You are part of this family, this library family that's incredibly special. And you're helping make sure that kids, Team Read, Helene and Kyle, and the program like Team Read can happen in this community and really be leveraged even further because of the library. But you are also more than just donors. You are ambassadors, you are advocates, you are the ones that can help others understand why a healthy, thriving library is so fundamental to a healthy, thriving community. But most importantly, let's just make sure we keep our library as strong as possible and remaining as a cornerstone of our society, our city, our community, and our democracy.